Ole Miss won the offseason. All the national pundits say so. It doesn't matter if they lose to LSU, though.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Rebel Nation. I am your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast covers the start of practice and the reality that winning the offseason, it no longer matters. The focus is now on that crucial game against the LSU Tigers and all the games that come before it. The LSU Tigers matchup, though, has never really been easy for Ole Miss football when it matters. National pundits have rated Ole Miss as a top 10 team, but this game is in Baton Rouge, and it's really the only true toss-up on the schedule. And it is what is standing between Ole Miss and achieving every one of their goals. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC, or even Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy provide different perspectives on college football, the SEC, and Ole Miss even. So check it out. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So I was trolling through Twitter before I hit record on this podcast. And lo and behold, there was a short put up by Greg McElroy. And the whole purpose of it is Greg McElroy in the video said, it is time that we take Ole Miss seriously and realize that Ole Miss could win the whole freaking thing. And he means the national championship. And he talked about all of the explosive weapons on offense. He talked about Jackson Dart as a returning quarterback. He talked about how Lane Kiffin went out and improved the lines in the transfer portal. It was just an example of the basic winning of the offseason that Ole Miss has done up until this point. And I do agree that Ole Miss won the offseason this year. Congratulations to them. Hang a banner. But I am here to tell you right now that it doesn't really matter if you won the offseason if Ole Miss does not move forward into the regular season and win the games and do what we expect them to do. And the real true first test of that is the LSU game. So winning the offseason is great. It's not going to matter much if you drop that LSU game or any of the games preceding that. That LSU game is going to be really interesting because if you look at this Ole Miss team right now, that's right after they play South Carolina, and that has a chance to be a very weird game. We're talking about back-to-back cauldrons. Lane Kiffin did Ole Miss no favors with his Juice Wells video that he put out on social media. That place is going to be a cauldron. It's going to be a big deal on October 5th. On October 12th, Ole Miss plays a game at LSU, and that is going to be an electric atmosphere as well, but that is going to be an electric atmosphere in the way that it is just two teams that are really good, a big game, the LSU-Bama game type atmosphere. That is the way Tiger Stadium is going to look that night. Ole Miss has athletes all over the field. If you look at the East-West Shrine game, the Senior Bowl, Ole Miss is amongst the leading teams in the entire country in draftable players. So Ole Miss is probably going to roll into Tiger Stadium with the most rare of rare things in this rivalry, and that is the better football team. Ole Miss has a potential to be favored at kickoff in that game. They are currently the underdog by a point or two, but they have a chance by kickoff to be favored. The reason for that is LSU lost their Heisman winning quarterback, and LSU lost two first-round wide receivers, and of course, they had one of the worst defenses that I've ever seen. Because of that, I am skeptical of what LSU could be. Now, the other side of that coin is Brian Kelly in year 3, no matter where he's been, has been one of the best years of his tenure. I think he's lost 4 or 5 games at all of his stops in year 3s total. So theoretically, this LSU team could be amongst his best or one of the better ones that he's had. And this is an LSU team that won 10 games a year ago, again, with that elite Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. So LSU, I think, has a chance to be good. Now, defensively, if they were anywhere near as bad as they were a year ago, none of this is going to matter. But let's just say that LSU figures out on defense a way to be a little bit more influential, a little bit better. Instead of having a 90 to 110 level defense, they just have a 60 to 70 level defense. If LSU has that with the offense that is not going to be good as last year, now understand that, but they're still going to be pretty good because Garrett Nussmeier is a good player and their wide receivers, LSU always is going to have wide receivers. So it's going to be a game that is at least losable, no matter how LSU looks, and a night game in Tiger Stadium. And when the ball gets kicked off that night, and any of the games that Ole Miss plays, it doesn't matter that after the Penn State game until today, we talked about what could be in the Ole Miss football season. And if Ole Miss is not able to pull that game out, if Ole Miss pulls a Bo Wallace and just randomly throws a Hail Mary in the end zone like 2014, or they just don't show up in the second half like they did in 2022, you're going to have a situation where this LSU team can pop up and get you. They just can. They're going to be a talented football team and probably the third most talented team on Ole Miss's schedule, even though defensively there's problems. So we'll see. But you want to talk about winning the offseason. The reason Ole Miss won the offseason is because of the weapons that they have. Trey Harris, potentially the best wide receiver in all of college football, lining up for Ole Miss to go against his home state team that did not offer him. This is going to be the biggest game of his life. And Trey Harris against LSU a year ago was simply uncoverable. LSU could do nothing with him to the point where it didn't matter. It got to the point where Ole Miss got the ball back in that game with like 2 minutes to play and 80 yards to go. And there was no doubt that Ole Miss was going to score a touchdown in that game. So Ole Miss's offense versus LSU's defense, that's an advantage Ole Miss all day, every day. Ole Miss's defense versus LSU's offense, I think that's going to be a little bit closer to a wash. And I think special teams, Ole Miss is going to end up with a better kicker in that game as well. Now, Tiger Stadium and the intangibles and all of that stuff is going to be a factor that comes into play. But the point is, all of the stuff we talked about for the last 8 months, it's not going to matter when that game gets kicked off. And if Ole Miss loses that game and it derails everything that we've talked about, it's going to be hard to come back from. And what I mean by that is if Ole Miss loses that LSU game, a little bit of the luster comes off that Georgia game. A little bit of the luster comes off that Oklahoma game. And if Ole Miss loses that LSU game and you lose that Oklahoma game, you were playing Georgia basically for the playoff at that point, maybe. And you're looking straight in the face at 9-3, at 8-4, which would be a unmitigated disaster for Lane Kiffin and everybody for building this team, calling it the last dance, the way they brand it, the whole 9 yards. This LSU game is going to be very important. All of this talk that has happened in the course of the offseason, it doesn't matter if you stumble that game. It's going to be a really big game. The closer this game gets to fruition and to the season, the more I'm thinking, yeah, this has a chance to be really special. And we'll see. Ole Miss should have the more talented team. I think by kickoff, Ole Miss should be the favorite in the game. But LSU, make no mistake, when Ole Miss is good, Tiger Stadium is different. We've all seen it. And they are going to have a talented team. Should be really cool indeed, honestly. Up next on Locked On Ole Miss, I hope our graphics team at Ole Miss is gearing up for an exciting August as watch lists start rolling out. We'll see if they can keep up with all the names that could be on it. So stay tuned to see which Rebels have made the cut and which Rebels we think are going to make the cut. Game Time is the place to get your Ole Miss tickets with killer last-minute deals, all in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. Vaught-Hemingway doesn't have a bad seat in it, but Game Time gives you views from every seat in Vaught-Hemingway where you can check out exactly what it looks like. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation, job loss protection, all of that stuff. You can take the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets with Game Time. And with this being the most anticipated season in Ole Miss history, I might be able to help you out with tickets as well. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The most anticipated Ole Miss football season is upon us, and some great games are on the schedule. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you're always going to have time to enjoy a nutritious, great tasting meal. Make today the day you kickstart your new healthy routine. So what are you waiting for? They have 35 different meals with more than 60 add-ons to choose from every single week. You always have new flavors to explore. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose 6 meals preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply just eat well balanced. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume? With all of that screaming and shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this week, Locked On is going to be adding 2 more 24/7 stream channels in college sports and NFL. We will link the college sports ones onto the YouTube page, and you can enjoy some other perspectives from around college football. And our national shows are awesome. Our Saturday pre-show, I guess we did it on Friday. Fantastic. Really great stuff. So tune in for that. So Ole Miss's graphics department is having to make graphics for each and every Ole Miss football player that makes a preseason watch list. And so far, you had Jackson Dart with the Maxwell Award list, which, we all kind of expected that. And today, right before I hit record again, Walter Nolan was nominated for the Outland Trophy and the Nagurski Award. And it got me thinking, every single award watch list Ole Miss is going to pop up on. Ole Miss is probably going to have a representation from talking about, the Davey O'Brien, Jackson Dart, Maxwell, Jackson Dart, all the quarterback awards, Jackson Dart's going to be on there. The running back awards, UB40, Ulysses Bentley IV, maybe even Rashad Amos could pop up on there as well. At wide receiver, would you be surprised if Juice Wells popped up on there? I would not. These are his numbers from 2022. He was an all-SEC level player a year ago. It would not surprise me if he joined Trey Harris on this list. Trey Harris is probably the best wide receiver in all of college football. He had 54 catches, nearly 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, and really only 9 games a year ago. So it's a situation to where it could be great. Princely Mamuelin, I think he has a chance. Caden Prieskorn, the Mackey Award. Excuse me if I forget a name of one of these awards are called, because there's just so many of them and you don't think about it. But it is a situation that I think that Ole Miss has a chance to be pretty good in the award season. And this is another reason why I think this LSU game is so important. Ole Miss is going to walk down into Tiger Stadium with the rarest of rare all gifts. And that is they're probably going to have a more talented football team than LSU. which usually is not the case. And I don't mean that as an insult to anybody, but usually LSU has a pretty good football team. It comes from with them being essentially the only state school in the state that is worth going at the high Division I type level. Ole Miss has to share with Mississippi State and other schools, and population-wise, there's a lot of SEC schools that are within 4 hours of Oxford, Mississippi. So because of that, LSU usually ends up with the more talented football team. I don't think that is the case this year. Now, if you look at Ole Miss's schedule with the course of this season, these are my Locked On Ole Miss predictions. I do think that it's going to be important for Ole Miss to win games to get to the LSU game. And there's some tricky ones on there. So understand this. I'm not counting them and just saying, hey, this is going to happen. This is what I think is going to happen because Ole Miss is going to be favored in at least 10 games, and they might be favored in the 11th one against LSU. I'm not 100% sure about kickoff on that. But when you look at it, let's say Ole Miss goes into the LSU game 6-0 and wins that game. The Oklahoma game gets absolutely massive. There's an off week. The two games are back to back if you look at the way these games are situated. You have a chance to get ready. Ole Miss is probably going to be a 6 to 8 point favorite over Oklahoma in that game. Oklahoma, if you look at the blue chip ratio, I just did air quotes, by the way, comes into Oxford 70% on the list, although they did have to change out their offensive and defensive line. I think that could be problematic for the Sooners. We'll see how it looks by October 26th. But if you win those two games, and if you look at the games in October, we'll just put the games in October. We'll put it like that. At South Carolina, at LSU, Oklahoma at home. Win those three games, and that Georgia game just becomes the biggest game in Mississippi football history. You're going to have better talent than probably everybody on the schedule you play before Georgia. You just are. And I'm not putting down LSU in this case. I like Garrett Nussmeier. They're going to have good wide receivers. They have the best offensive line in all of college football. They have talented football players. I don't think they're as talented as Ole Miss this year. Ole Miss is going for 3 out of the last 4 wins in the series with LSU, and they're doing that for a reason. They're doing that because they have increased the talent level at a point to where it's kind of changed. And I had Jake Crane on my podcast. When was that? About 2 months ago? He's the host of Crane and Company. And he said that Ole Miss and LSU is like two programs that switched places. Ole Miss looks like LSU normally does, and LSU looks like Ole Miss normally does. And I think what he meant by that totally was the fact that LSU just had no defense a year ago. I mean, all of the flashbacks to 2018 and Wesley McGriff just came flooding back in that game. But if LSU gets a little bit better, and I'm not talking about going up to where they were when the Honey Badger was floating around and LSU's defense with Dave Aranda was completely different. I'm talking about just get to the 60s or 70s. Just get to a functional defense. If you can get to that point, with that offense, which is not going to be as good as it was a year ago. I don't care what anybody says about that. It's not going to be that good. It's still going to be good because Garrett Nussmeier is good and the receivers are good and they're going to have a good running back and they've got the best line in college football. But if you mix those together, you might have a more balanced football team and honestly a more dangerous football team because a year ago when Ole Miss played LSU, everybody talks about the ping pong nature of what went on in the Ole Miss LSU game. And Ole Miss got the ball back with like 2 minutes to go. And there wasn't a single person that didn't doubt that Ole Miss was going to go down and score a touchdown. LSU couldn't stop a nosebleed in that game. They couldn't stop a runny nose, honestly, in that game. And time ran out before they did the same thing to Ole Miss's defense. I mean, I'm not saying that, but the reason that they did that to Ole Miss's defense, they're not there anymore. LSU's defense is pretty much the same defense that they had last year, save a new coordinator. This is going to be a massively important game. I end up catching myself rambling, talking about what this game could be. And everybody circled during the whole offseason the Georgia game, me included, everybody, for what it could mean. And everybody looked at the odds that came out when FanDuel put those out and had LSU as like a 2-point favorite in the game. And everybody had outrage on that. And now the longer I think of it, the more I think that this is going to be a grudge match. And that's important because when Ole Miss is good and LSU is good and the game's in Tiger Stadium, this game is different. This game is potentially the best rivalry in all of the SEC. Now, the problem over the last 60 years is you can count on one hand the number of times that that's happened. But going back to the late 50s and Paul Dietzel and John Vaught and those, Glenn Griffin and Billy Cannon and all of those echoes from 57 to 63, that window that we love to talk about so much on this podcast, LSU was good in that window too. And that is the reason that it kind of carries over. There's almost a reflex. It's like, oh, LSU fans are like, oh, it's Ole Miss week. They're good. They're a threat to us. They've won 2 out of the last 3. They're going for 3 out of 4 in our own house. We need to ramp this up a little bit. And the importance of this game cannot be overstated, honestly. I think as this game gets closer, as October 12th gets closer, this is going to be a bigger and bigger, more important game on Ole Miss's schedule. And it being right after South Carolina, is a great gift for South Carolina. Congratulations to them. But this LSU game is going to get a lot of attention as it gets closer. Practice starts today, and Ole Miss is gearing up for this season, which has a chance to be really, really special. All roads lead to that showdown with LSU, and the Rebels are poised to stay potentially undefeated leading up to it. They have to, or this season's a failure. Don't miss our next segment on Locked On Ole Miss, where we talk about practice starting and more lead up to that LSU game and what it can mean before the Georgia game. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home really huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and 2 more are coming this week, by the way. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. I think later on this week, Locked On College Sports is going to be launching a 24/7 sports streaming channel, along with Locked On NFL doing it as well. So whether it be an NFL channel, a college sports channel, and yours truly is going to be on there as well. The preview show for college football, for those who don't know, is beautiful. It's fantastic. It comes on Fridays during the season. It is really, really good. So Ole Miss, and that LSU game is going to be absolutely massive. And we talked about all of the plaudits that Ole Miss got over the course of this offseason. People have ranked them pretty much consensusly as a top 10 team. They think that they are a shoe-in to make the playoff. They have the most draft-eligible players, or draftable players with draftable grades, for the East-West Shrine game and the Senior Bowl. And everybody, one after another, like I said, Greg McElroy popped up talking about we need to get used to the idea that Ole Miss can win this whole thing. And it's all true. Every bit of that, if you look on paper, is true. But we've hit the point to where the offseason's over. Ole Miss won the offseason. That doesn't really necessarily mean that much anymore. Now it's at the point where they're practicing for the season. It's going to be important to win every game leading up to the LSU, beat LSU, get ready for Oklahoma, win that game, and then let the Georgia game just kind of exponentially get bigger and bigger. That is what this is looking for. That's what this is looking like. But with spring practice basically being closed, there's a lot of questions that we don't necessarily have. We haven't seen what Walter Nolan looks like. We haven't seen what Princely Amamuellen looks like, and honestly, we won't because he's still recovering. We want to see what Juice Wells looks like. We want to see what Lewis Moore looks like, King Lawrence, Yam Banks, those players, Trey Amos, Isaiah Hamilton. We want to see what they look like. Chris Paul, we want to see what he looks like. Diego Pounds, Nate Kalepo, as this transfer class coalesced in Oxford, Mississippi, that is supposed to take Ole Miss to the promised land. And that is what all of these national pundits say. We have not seen it. And starting today, people are going to start laying eyes on this as they're getting ready for the first football game against Furman on August 31st. It's going to be a big game. It's going to be a massive game. It's not a game that Ole Miss can necessarily lose, but it's going to be big that the majority of the fan base, the first time they lay eyes on a lot of these players will be then. So off season and all the noise that we talked over the course of the last 8 months, essentially, for any of this to matter, Ole Miss has to win that game against LSU and every game preceding it. It's going to be important for Ole Miss to go into the Oklahoma game 7-0. That is going to be important. And that includes road games at Wake Forest, a Kentucky game that could be at least a little tricky, right? South Carolina that has a chance to be an absolute cauldron because of the Juice Wells stuff. But the point of this is the media and everybody loves us. They love Ole Miss this season. Everything is fantastic. You don't win that game, it doesn't matter. Watch how quickly these same people that talked nonstop about Ole Miss for 8 months, you lose to LSU, they don't talk about you anymore. And that's just the way this works. And there's several questions that we're going to have. We want to see what happens. We want to see when and if Deion Smith shows up at Ole Miss. We want to see the number 2 cornerback. That's going to be an interesting position. The number 2 linebacker, I want to see what that looks like and who is there. It should be really good and really fun and honestly very exciting. So thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports. It's one of the many reasons why we are the number 1 Ole Miss podcast. So thank you for support on that. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. So make Locked On College Football your second listen. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion of the upcoming season and ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment and the transfer portal, NIL, the new expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And you can become a Locked On Ole Miss insider by signing up for our subtext right now. It's a texting program where you basically ask to be notified on everything relevant in Ole Miss sports, and you get to do this without all of the message board trolls. Best part, it comes with a 14-day free trial. We're going to add perks to it. We're seeing exactly what we can do, but it should be the future of college sports coverage. The link, of course, is down below in the description. And for those of you on YouTube, we will send you there right now. Here's Locked On Sports Today. We'll see you later. Hotty toddy.